Hello and welcome to another episode of My Little Analyst. Now, I know in my previous episode I had said that I was going to discuss who I think is going to replace Celestia, but it just so happens that this week marks my 1 year anniversary of getting into the show, and I kind of like to celebrate that by doing a little thing on why I believe My Little Pony has attracted so many followers, to kind of analyze the show from a perspective of why has this obtained the status it has? Why has this appealed people so far outside its demographic? Now, I know this is a often discussed topic, and I can't really add too much to it, but I can at least give my personal experience and my personal take on it. I think the most important point is that there is no one reason. People like the show for different reasons. I mean, if one just looks at who people think are the best pony, that should tell you there's far from a consensus in the community. Every person is different, and whatever every person gets out of the show is different. But that being said, I think there are some broad categories and some broad generalities. I'll start off by saying how I got into the show. I actually more or less started out as a hater. Now, I never posted negative things, but when my sister first told me that she was watching the show, I was distraught. I mean, she was a college student. She shouldn't be watching a show meant for little girls. And then when she told me that guys were watching it, well, I viewed this as the emasculation of society. This was the beginning of the end of civilization. This was horrible. That's what I felt. I didn't say anything, but that's how I felt. But these feelings were only reinforced when I later discovered a mod for a grand strategy game that included the ponies in it. It was like, I thought here we were safe. You know, these were men. These were men who wanted to fight and conquer the world, not lovey two-shoe guys. It just reinforced those feelings. And this was a couple years ago. And then last year, a little over a year ago, I was at college and I heard a guy talking on the phone saying that his roommate did nothing but watch My Little Pony. Well, this reconjured all those negative feelings for me, so I kind of tried to ignore it, but it still conjured those feelings, and it made me once again sad and depressed for society. Then, over the weekend, on Saturday, the 29th, I was working on a mod. Parenthetically for the same game that there was the pony mod for, but had nothing to do with ponies, obviously. So I was working on a mod, and it was going slowly, much slower than I wanted. So I decided to try to motivate myself. I often work best when under the gun, so I said, okay, I'll motivate myself. Due to how recent it was, I said if I fail to get a certain amount of the mod done by a certain time, I would watch an episode of My Little Pony. Long story short, I didn't hit it, and I loaded up the video and could not play it. I did not want to hit that play button. It was horrible. I would rather have blown my brains out than have hit that play button. However, a threat's motivational power is only as good as your ability to carry it out. So in order to actually be viable, my threats be viable in the future, I had to carry it out. So I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and in one swift motion clicked the play button. My immediate reaction was, this isn't as bad as I thought. And then I hit the intro and thought it was exactly as bad as I thought. But I kept watching. I said I would watch an episode, and I was going to watch an episode. And I made it through the first episode, and I thought it was meh. It wasn't great, it wasn't bad, it wasn't as bad as I thought, that's for sure, but meh. However, while modding, I often like to have a video in the background, because modding can be very tedious. So, I had a video in the background, so I just said, I'll watch the next episode as a video in the background. And kept doing that, and eventually at some point along the way, I stopped watching while modding and just started watching, and then in less than a week, I had finished the entire show. And I thought the show was pretty good. I wasn't a brony. I didn't believe I was a brony. But then I kept rewatching the show and started checking out DeviantArt and such. And eventually I said, you know what, I'm a brony. And that's only grown since then. So what was it that drew me into it? Well, I can certainly say one thing that made it tolerable was that I had low expectations and it massively exceeded them. It wasn't as bad as I thought. I don't know exactly what I thought. I mean, I hadn't seen the previous generations. But I thought it was going to be some sort of sickly, saccharine sweet thing with no substance, no depth, all fluff, oh, would you like a tea party, Mr. Snuffles? And all that kind of stuff with rainbows and just sickly sweet. And that's not what we got. We got epic fights, we got big wars and betrayals and characters with actual personality and depth. That was something, and I think beating expectations is a big part of it. But I think there's a lot more to it than that. What kept me there, though? What kept me coming back? What was there? I mean, reading expectations is enough for you to say it's an okay show. That's what got me. But what made me actually say this is a good show? Well, I'm not completely sure, but I can break it down into some possibilities, and I think these can apply for most. 1, the character acting, the voice acting. The voice acting is very good. All the characters have distinct, at least of the main characters, have very distinct voices that work. Of course, I would personally say the best is Tabitha St. Germain with Rarity, but Twilight's good. They're all good. None of the voices suck, and they're all very, very good, better than a lot of other shows. So I certainly say that's a plus in its favor. But good vocals aren't enough for a show. I mean, the visuals are also very nice. The ponies are very cute. I'd say much cuter than in previous gens, so that's also a plus in its favor. But I think the key is that the show has depth. The fact, if you look at how many Brony analysis people there are, it's amazing. Yes, we're probably overanalyzing it, seeing more than there actually is, but the fact of the matter is we can do this because the show does have a great deal of depth. The characters have a tremendous amount of depth. They change, they grow. They're not the same characters that they were in Season 1, even halfway through Season 1. They have matured. Now, that's not super common, especially in kids' shows. I mean, it happens in other shows, but that's not that common. That certainly makes the show more enjoyable. But I think there's more to it than that. Certainly the script writing's good. They actually have adventures, and even the non-adventure episodes are very good. They tend to be very amusing. They also do have very good comedy. It's not uncommon for the show to actually get a chuckle out of me, and sometimes a full-out laugh. It's well written. It tends to be tightly written. Up until Season 3, there weren't any episodes I didn't like. That can't be said for any other show. That on 2.5 seasons, there weren't a single episode I didn't like. That's not that common. So they do a good job writing it. Furthermore, they've created a world. People love folklore. They love mythology and all that. And this plays directly into that, because here's a world unlike our own, and we're slowly being dabbled how this world works and the history of this world. And a lot of people love that, eat it up. I mean, there's a reason Lord of the Rings and such are so popular. And this is kind of playing into that. But I think there's a more fundamental reason, at any rate, and I think a lot of Bronies like the show, which is it's a wonderful break. The world today is an incredibly cynical world. One can't turn on the TV without getting a blast of that. One can't open the newspaper. One can pretty much do nothing without getting reminded about how cynical the world is. It's a dark, depressing world where everything's bad, everything's going wrong. And My Little Pony is a 20-minute break from that. Yes, things don't always go right, but there's good and there's evil, and there's nothing cynical about it. It's not trying to be ironic. It's not trying to be cynical in any way, shape, or form. It is what it is. And what it is just a nice, not even piece of fluff. It's just wouldn't it be nice if this is how the world was? Just cynicism free. Ironicness free. It's like, this is a good world. It's a world we'd like to have, but can't. It's kind of an unattainable ideal, but for those 20 minutes, we're in that world, and we're experiencing it, and that we're living it. I'm not saying it's a coping mechanism. I'm merely saying it's a refreshing break from the rest of society. And that's just very nice, to be broken free from that cynicism and just to be able to enjoy something without it having to be significant. It's a nice break. And I mean, I like other shows. Family Guy can be amusing, but My Little Pony it captures the imagination. And it's a world we'd like to live in. And sure, we don't know too much about it, but it seems to be a nicer world than our own. I think most Bronies would agree with that, and it's a world that would be nice if our world could be a little more like. So I think that's a large part of the reason why Bronies like it, why they get into it, because it's just so refreshing to see something like this and to be broken free from the cynicism that is around us at all times. Now, is that all there is to the show? No, there's a lot of other things. I mean, certainly one can point to, like, having John Delancey, who every Trekkie would know is as Q, be Discord, in essence reprising his role. Since I'm a bit of a Trekkie, I liked that. I didn't actually know about that until I had watched the episode, but it was very enjoyable. So some people might get into it through that. And there are probably other reasons why I don't list here. And, feel free to mention those in the comments. But for me at any rate, why I think I like this show is that it's cynicism free and just it all ties itself together so well that it's not just that, ooh, would you like another cup of tea? There's actual substance there. It's a substantive show that deals with serious issues in a serious, if lighthearted manner, and it's not cynical at all about its conclusions. It is saying friendship is a very, very good thing, and all the lessons are supposed to be taken at face value. There's nothing deceitful or cynical about anything in the show. And I, for one, liked it. I wish more shows, both children's and adults shows, were like that. So I think the reason My Little Pony has just become such a thing is because it's cute and it's well put together, but furthermore, it's a nice break from the grim reality of the world. You know, most bronies are, I'd say, 14 to 25-year-olds. The next generation, the ones who are going to be inheriting it from our parents. And let's be honest, the world we're coming into and going to be inheriting is not the one they were wanting us to inherit. You know, high debts, bad economies, a smaller generation trying to replace our parents' generation, meaning we're going to have to spend more of our own money to support them. It's not a great world we're coming into. And this show is a nice break from that. And it doesn't even distract us from it, but it tries to show us a different way. And even if that way is not necessarily practical, it's a good way. And it's certainly one I think a lot of bronies do want to try to move the world in that direction. I certainly know I've sometimes tried taking a leaf from the Ponies books. And that's another thing about this show. The characters are believable. They're believable characters. Every character isn't perfect. They all have their flaws, but they're all realistic flaws. And every character also has their strengths. So they be actually useful role models. They are believable characters that people can relate to. So often in kids shows, and in a lot of other shows for that matter, the characters aren't particularly relatable. But My Little Pony manages to make every character relatable. Even the characters people don't like, if people look at them hard enough, they can find some way to relate to them. I just think My Little Pony is that perfect mix. It gets pretty much everything right, from good visuals, cute characters, well-written, well-defined characters, and of course a good message and well-written shows. It's hard to see how the show could honestly be improved. It is an awesome show. I don't know if I've said anything here that people don't already know or hadn't already figured, but I thought I'd just share my experience and why I personally like the show and why the analysis I've done for myself. I can't say this applies to every brony, but it certainly applies to me. So I hope you found something worthwhile here, and if not, never fear. Next week should hopefully be a more interesting topic. I figure I'm not going to talk about who's going to replace Celestia next week. The topic of equestrian history is a fairly popular topic at the moment, so I thought I'd do my take on that before getting to who I think is going to replace Celestia. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, or at least found it interesting. Please feel free to leave comments, or to like, or to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Thank you.